Welcome back, classmates. My name is Umi Steph, and this is my wonderful host, Uni, and we are Earth School Journey.
Greetings,
So we are
everyone.
back. Yeah. So, Uni, how you been?
I'm doing all right, sis. I'm doing all right. I made it out of Mercury retrograde, and I'm here. So praise the Lord, I'm here. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, it's funny coming out of this retrograde. I'm feeling a little off still. But getting like it's coming back to normal, but just a little slower than it would usually. Then again, I haven't had a bad retrograde in a while, so maybe this is normal and I'm just not used to it anymore.
I think that may be it. I'm telling you. I mean, I've heard so many people, of course, over the years talk about Mercury retrograde, and I've gotten hit a couple times, but this time threw me for a loop for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So this month we've been talking about ritual, and this is our study hall episode. So this is where we kind of get into our practical tips. And we've really been going in on understanding ritual, and I have to say we always say this like we are all students in our school and we're all teachers in our school, and we really have been learning this month. This is a topic that I feel like I'll speak for myself. I've really just been really digging into this month and understanding um maybe not for the first time like but for the first time with like any depth. And so a lot of this, as we talk about it, is really just unfolding. The knowledge is, we're looking into things, we're learning things. We have, different books and things that we've been looking at. And so it's just it's a concept that honestly in our Western society we don't really have a lot of exposure to. So it really is new. And so I really am happy that we chose this theme this month because it's given me an opportunity to really go deeper in understanding the importance of rituals. And we talked a lot about that this month. Um, you have any like opening kind of thoughts about about this topic this month?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. This like we like we received the curriculum from, the Most High, and as we have really dived into um this month, this subject, it's definitely been an eye opener for me as well. You know what I mean? Um, just thinking about some of the things that you have brought forth about more community, family based rituals, things that I haven't really thought about, you know what I mean? And then also, just for myself, realizing that maybe some of the things that I thought were rituals kind of weren't. And, how can I be more intentional about that? And also being exposed to, rituals, in different areas of my life. And it's just all been a very eye-opening month, and I feel like this is a topic that we could definitely see ourselves going through again,
Yeah.
especially after we, maybe take some time to like really put some, I don't want to say thought, but like really intention around
Mhm.
creating some rituals, and really, and really seeing the results of them, you know what I mean? And like you said, us being students in real time is, that's real. It's so real.
It is. It really is. I am. It always amazes me how often we pick a topic and it really just starts to show up, even in small ways. It's not always in the big ways, but it's even in small ways. And I just have these moments where I go, "Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about this month on our school journey. No wonder this is showing up in my life."
Yeah.
And this month, for me, I I haven't had a whole lot of ritual, and I think that the lack of anything showing up proved to me that there was something missing. You know what I mean? And that I needed to really, and I, I thought about it, and yes, I've done some different rituals. I've been, to an ayahuasca ceremony. I've, do my moon rituals and things like that, but that's the extent of it, really. Like there's nothing on a regular basis that, you know, really I get to do. I haven't, because it's just not been a part of my life. So, it's really interesting. So, since we're talking about this pretty much anyway, how has Earth School been for you lately, Uni?
It's been really, really good. From a ritual aspect, as we discussed in like our pre-meet, it was my daughter's birthday is this month, and so, we did some things for her. We didn't throw like a big party. She went on a trip, so that's become like a a ritual for her.
Right.
Girls trips for her birthday. um and then also her getting inducted into a sorority. Rituals showed up in that way in my life, with her going through like the ceremony process, and then that was a closed thing, like I wasn't able to take part in that. But then afterward, we celebrated her and her sorors, and then the probate was like a week or two later, which is also like a ritual where they come out and they come out basically to the world that they are a part of the sorority. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
ritual really showed up in my life through my daughter this month, and it wasn't like intentional on my part, of course. You know what I mean? It just kind of happened this way. She's been actually trying to get into the sorority since like maybe her freshman year. And so now that she's a senior, getting inducted into it like right before, a month or so before she graduates. And it's just been really interesting how it's really been in alignment, and it's really exposed me to some things that I was never a part of. I didn't go to traditional college. Most of my schooling has been online. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So her doing the traditional 4 year schooling and then deciding to be in a sorority and all of that is just it's just really been amazing. And I feel like the timeliness of it all, the alignment of it during this month as we are studying ritual has been so eye-opening for me. And it is also just made me think about some of the things, like I said earlier, that you were talking about, like marking these transitions on a bigger scale. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily have to be an induction or anything like that, but just a celebration of transitions and growth. As all of those things have been going through my mind, and it's really been beautiful. Like, I really can't complain at all. I'm really grateful for the alignment this month. So, how about you, sis? How has Earth School been going for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going well. It's definitely eye-opening, And this month, as I said, it kind of revealed to me that I needed to kind of lean more into ritual, and I'm looking forward to approaching, life with a little more intention around this area. And, I've talked about it before, and it was always my intention when I started my farm was to have certain rituals, when I'm planting, when I'm doing different things. And I kind of informally do a lot of things. I talk to the plants, I thank them when I harvest, things like that. But I this month made me feel like I need to make that more of a sacred ceremony. I still can do it in the way that I do it, with every time I go out to pick, saying thank you and things like that. But to have a day where, we have some kind of ceremony to thank the plants and the harvest and thank God and spirit and Mother Earth and all of those things, to make it more intentional and even more communal, because it's usually just me out
Mhm.
there, and sometimes my wife out there, going thank you and picking little things and just being happy little. So to make it more communal, and the effect that that may have on our kids, and at some point our grandkids, going down the line, and being able to pass those rituals and traditions down even. Um, and what's coming to me as I'm saying that is to think about what it does in breaking the generational curses and trauma and cycles that are negative, and passing down something that's more positive, right? And
Mm,
so
mhm.
that those are all things that are just like, it's just they're just in the little baby seedling forming in my consciousness now. And so I don't have a whole lot to say about it because it's all very new to me. It's something I'm just learning, and I'm excited about it. It's great to like have this new technology, kind of spiritual technology, to like work with.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So, classmates, how's Earth School been going for you lately? Let's talk about it. Put it in the chat. Uni and I are in the chat right now, and we'll be responding to you all and talking with you all. So, let us know, like, how's Earth School been going? Have you done anything around ritual? Have you done anything around anything? Any of the past topics, things that we're not even talking about right now? What's going on for you? Let us know. Okay. We want to hear from you, and we want to make a program that really addresses your needs and your thoughts. And we want to learn from you as well. So tell us how our school's going for you. What's coming up for you? All of us have the same curriculum, but it doesn't always show up at the same time, or in the same lifetime. So let us know. It's maybe something that we can definitely benefit from, and maybe we have some light to shed on something that you're going through at the moment. So let's get into our conversation about practices. But before we do that, we always start off, I feel like every month well, not I feel like, I know every month we start off with spiritual hygiene and consistency being like the topic of that particular month, right? And I think that applies here, but there's an important distinction that Uni and I kind of came upon in really talking about this and researching it and everything. And it's really the difference between spiritual hygiene and ritual. Uni, do you want to start off this conversation, since you know you kind of brought it to my attention? So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I have been kind of mixing up the two, right? Spiritual hygiene and rituals. I would for example, I reference my morning coffee. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is my daily ritual. And in a way, it is my daily ritual, but then in another way, it's like it is spiritual hygiene. And so I was just thinking about it like to myself, and I was wondering, I'm like, okay, what exactly is the difference between spiritual hygiene and ritual? I remember when we went through the month on spiritual hygiene, and like you said, we talk about spiritual hygiene all the time. But when we did the deep dive last year, I remember thinking specifically, like, what kept coming to me for spiritual hygiene was keeping our mirror clear. You know what I mean? It
Mhm.
keeps us clear, keeps us balanced. I remember thinking of the Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, and, just like that whole metaphor. And I think that's why it kept coming to me. And so I said to myself, I'm like, well, what's the difference? What is spiritual hygiene? What is rituals? And so what I came up with, of course, after doing some research, was it did confirm that spiritual hygiene is the regulation, it is the maintenance, it is keeping that mirror clean. So I was like, okay, that's great. Okay, so we're clear on that part. And to add to that, what is ritual, and how is it different, or how is it similar to spiritual hygiene? And rituals actually, they, even though spiritual hygiene, it's also setting an intention, but Ritual is setting an intention and like marking a moment. It's as we've said basically, throughout the month, it's marking a transition. It's deciding who you're going to be beyond that, spiritual hygiene. Spiritual hygiene keeps you clear, it keeps you balanced, it keeps you clean. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But once you're clean and you decide to go out into the world, or you decide, you know what I mean, and you put on your clothes, and that's how I feel. I feel like the metaphor of spiritual hygiene is like the shower that you take, and rituals is kind of like the clothes that you put on afterward. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
deciding
Mhm.
exactly how are you going to express yourself once you've gotten clear, essentially.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
again, they're both, intentional. They're both about consistency. They're both about, keeping you in alignment with your higher self. But I think that when it comes to rituals, it again, it really helps you to decide who you're becoming on a greater scale. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It helps you decide who, so when I think about my coffee, right? And I was really always, I try to like put this into terms that I can really understand. So it's like, okay, so my morning coffee, yes, it's kind of like my spiritual hygiene a little bit, but I do think that it's more of my daily ritual because of the intention that I put behind selecting the herbs that I put, and it helps me to lean into the help, excuse me, it helps me lean into who I'm really trying to be on a greater scale. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Keeping my circulation going with the ginger. The what else do I put in there? My cinnamon,
Yeah.
my oat milk, just like this healthy, taking it from like a, just like I said, like a habit, and making it something more special and making it more healthy, and it helping me to be in alignment, and it's not something that I do mindlessly. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's like okay, this is me starting my day, most days. And like I said, it doesn't have to be every single day. There are days that I miss, but it's definitely a daily ritual for me because of the intention that I put behind it, and what it means to me on a greater scale.
Mhm.
um uh Another thing that I was trying to figure out more examples, because I felt like, okay, so like my morning coffee, okay, like I get that, but there's other things that we do that could be spiritual hygiene versus ritual. So one of the things was journaling. Sometimes I journal every day, sometimes it's, something happens or whatever, that I decide to
Mhm.
journal. And so, what I found out is that if you're journaling to vent or to release, it's more like spiritual hygiene. If you're journaling to define like a new chapter, or to, like you talked about your new moon and full moon practices, that's more of a
Right.
ritual. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
If you sit down to calm down and take a few deep breaths, that can be spiritual hygiene. But if you're sitting intentionally and, quietly to mark a moment, you know what I mean, to like really take in a moment, that can be more of a ritual. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's a fine line, I think. But I do think it's good to have the distinction and understand that, we do our spiritual hygiene to keep us clear, and we do our rituals to help us to set these intentions and make sure that we're being the best that we can be in connecting to our higher selves.
Mm. Yeah, I think when I think about this, and you were talking about these examples, the example of um, when I did the ayahuasca ceremony, they really stressed the importance of going back and having a practice to integrate what you got out of the ceremony. And so, like that ceremony, that big thing is a ritual. It was a redefining of self in that moment. It was really, really was. I don't think I've ever. I don't I'm not going to say think. I know that I'm not the same person I was before I went to that ceremony. But to integrate that into my life, I had to do the spiritual hygiene.
Yeah.
Your rituals are not going to be effective if you're not consistently, doing the spiritual hygiene. It's not going to integrate, properly if you're not focused on your spiritual hygiene. You may do a ritual and then your hygiene changes, because for me it definitely did. I wasn't as much of a meditator or anything like that before I did that ceremony. And then when I came back, I really was more into being more in tune with the earth and wanting to meditate. And so my spiritual hygiene just looked different. One, it increased significantly, and so I think it's important for us to recognize that, it's like these rituals do this heavy lifting, and we have these defining moments, depending on what the ritual is. You may not be necessarily the same person. And I think if you're really doing it with intention, then you probably aren't the same person, because the point is to shift something in consciousness. But if you want to
Mhm.
maintain that shift at a high vibration, then the spiritual hygiene is a must. And so I think that was really an important distinction. I'm so glad you brought it to our attention,
Thank you.
because I think we were both kind of conflating them a little bit as we were having this conversation throughout the month. And I really hope that everybody who watches our show, or everybody who watches this podcast, if you watch one episode about a topic, please watch the other ones, because you will definitely see growth in our conversation from homeroom to study hall. There's definitely, there's some things that go down in the middle. You may catch one of these out of context and you're going to be like, what? And then, you listen to another one, you're like, oh, okay, now I understand how we got there. Because
Yeah.
there's definitely a growth that happens within ourselves as we do each of these episodes. So please, if this is the first one you're watching on ritual, go back. Please go back to the beginning. Start from study hall. I mean, start from homeroom. Watch the two, that we go into deep dives, and then come back to this and revisit it, because so much happens in the meantime as we learn along with you, you know. So the next thing we really want to talk about is really, how do you create your own rituals? What, why, and like, what is the purpose of creating well, not what is the purpose of creating the ritual, but like, if you want to implement a ritual, I think the first step is to decide what is the purpose of the ritual you're doing. What are you trying to accomplish by this ritual? I don't think just having a ritual for the sake of having a ritual is really the point. Oh, people have rituals, so now I'm going to have a ritual, and you just randomly pick something. No, I think it has to have intention. Like with me, I'm choosing to implement ritual in the sense of my gardening, because that's important to me. And I want to be a good steward of the earth, and I want to be closer to Mother Earth, because that's what's important to me. Um and so the first thing I think we need to talk about with this is, when you're creating your own ritual, how do you define what your purpose is? Like, where are you pulling that from? And I'm going to turn this over to you in a sec, because the thing that you mentioned was that we needed to really sit in the stillness. And so, do you want to elaborate on that for us?
Yes, thank you. Stillness really, I talk about this all the time, how it really helped me to understand where I was out of alignment in my life. And um, by understanding where I was out of alignment, I was able to really start to figure out what it was that I needed. You know what I mean? Um, it helped me to realize, where I was kind of like lacking or allowing myself to be in situations that were not um really fulfilling to me,
Mm,
And so I think stillness is like the greatest, most important thing, because it's going to it's like you kind of stop and allow yourself to really listen to yourself,
mhm,
and decide what it is that you need to either feel grounded, to feel abundant, to feel loved, to feel like whatever it is that you need, you know. And once you figure out what you need, you can really start to choose, even the smallest thing, the smallest ritual, the smallest action that will really support you in getting to what you need. But yeah, that stillness is really key, because a lot of times you just, when you're going through life and rushing and ripping and running and doing all these things, like, you don't even realize sometimes that you're out of a life. You think you
Mhm.
are, because you're moving, or sometimes you're being productive, or you're whatever, like, you think, oh, I'm okay. But then when you sit and you feel within yourself, and you're like, wait a minute, no, I rushed through that. I
Mhm.
just or not even rushed through it. I pressed through that. I didn't allow myself to really feel and realize that that wasn't really in alignment for me. So yeah, I think the stillness really helps you to listen and really get in tune with yourself.
Yeah, and I think that that's necessary when you're trying to create a new ritual, to really just sit in that clarity of the stillness and allow it to come to you, and don't really seek it, just allow it to come to you, because I feel like when we chase an answer, we tend to answer it ourselves and not allow the answer to come to us. um so I'm glad that you had mentioned that when we were having our pre-meet. um Another thing I wanted to bring up about creating a ritual, and you kind of touched on this, on it maybe being the smallest of things, is that I think the rituals that we create should be simple. They shouldn't necessarily be elaborate. And there may be a time for an elaborate ceremony, right? There may be an opportunity and a time for that, when that's appropriate, or when that's called for, when spirit directs you to do that. But not to feel like, oh, if it's not complicated, it's not right. You know, it can definitely be very serious, simple, and not have to be so complex. And what made me think about that was, I think a lot of our rituals have become shows. And they talk about this in Malidoma Semwe. He talks about this in the ritual, the book Ritual that we were reading, um, where in Western culture, say weddings, which are a ritual, right, have become a show. Um, Holiday dinners and things like that, and then we get so wrapped up in the details of that we forget the purpose of the ritual. We forget the connection. We forget the community. We forget the family. We forget even the self in trying to do some complex ritual. I don't know about you, but I've definitely tried to do like a bathing ritual or something like that, where I got so caught up on, I don't have this or I don't have that, and then I never end up doing it, or I do it and I don't feel, the effects of it, because I was more focused on the details of it, when really it could have just been simple. I could have just had a bath, a ritual bath with some herbs that were meaningful to whatever it is I was trying to accomplish. Instead of like, I need the baths, I need the salt, I need the candle, I need the incense, I need the lights to be off, I need the house to be quiet and all the kids to be gone, and you know, like trying to get all of these ducks in a row because the ritual has to be perfect, and then losing the purpose of the ritual. And when it's a community type ritual, like a wedding, or a family type ritual, I mean, I definitely have been a part of some things as not the organizer of it, but as like a participant, where I'm like, can we just be done with this? Why is this so? I don't know if you've had an experience like that, where you like go to a somewhere and they're doing this and this and this and this, and you're like, why is there so many steps to this thing? you know or it's so elaborate and so grand and so showy that you're like, what is really the reason why we're here? Is it for them to show off how much money they spent on this thing, or Are we here for the union of two people and the ceremony and the sacredness of that, right? And so I just really wanted to make a note on that. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add, but I'll give you a chance to do that now.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I just agree wholeheartedly. It's the meaning is what makes the ritual important, and it's why you got to make sure you have the right people surrounding you, or you're in the right energy yourself, doing your spiritual hygiene. That the other people around you are in the right energy, and they've been doing their spiritual hygiene, and when you mark these transitions, with a ritual, you want to make sure that you like I mean, don't get me wrong, like nothing's really going to be perfect per se, but it's not the external perfection that you're looking for, that a lot of times that we find ourselves seeking. It's really the inner alignment, you know what I mean, making sure that the people that are here with you are in alignment, and they are supporting your union, or they're supporting your transition. It's really important. I've become very, very private in my life, because I have seen and heard so many different things in my life, and how someone could be sitting next to you at someone else's wedding, and saying some of the meanest things. You know what I mean? And it's
Right.
like,
Why are you here?
yeah, why are you here? Why were you invited? Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think it's definitely important to make sure things are being done for the right reasons, and that the our intuition, our discernment is leading the way, versus what looks good on the outside.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about different types of rituals. And we have already kind of mentioned some of this, and um, I think if you're trying to develop a ritual, then determining what type of ritual you want to have, or you need to have, I should probably say. Um, this hopefully will help you, think of that. And the first three that I'm going to mention are kind of who's going to be involved in the ritual, right? Is it a personal ritual where it's just me, myself, and I, me and spirit? Personal rituals, and that is really that's Uni's area of expertise. It's a personal ritual. And then there's a family ritual, which is done within a family, either the nuclear family or extended family, however, you define family. Maybe it's chosen family, can be whatever. And then there is the community level, where it's people outside of the family, maybe a neighborhood, maybe, a different group, or something like you were talking about with your daughter, a sorority, something of that nature. So I think that's one level, right, of category, where it's like there's personal, there's family, there's community. But then there's a different type of ritual, which may be seasonal, or kind of the rites of passage, which, celebrate milestones and transitions. Um, Another thing that had come to me as when I was looking up stuff about different types of rituals is there can be healing rituals, there can be death rituals, transition, grief rituals, different things like that. Are there any other types that you can really think of, Uni, that maybe we're forgetting to kind of mention? I'm sure that there's probably a ritual out there, a different type for everything, right? There's probably a bunch, but I'm trying to think of other things that our classmates might want to consider.
I can't think of anything other than what you've already mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't either. I was trying to do a real quick Google search, like what else comes up. No, and that was really it. But I'm sure like there probably are other things that we aren't aware of. As I said, our culture, our society, Western society is really not, especially in the United States, ritual focused. So really do your digging, figure out what's out there. What is it that you're looking for? I just got some books today that just had a whole list of different ceremonies and things from a Native American perspective that I'm not familiar with at all, and or may have mentioned or heard, at some point, but I don't really know a lot about them. So I think doing some homework around what type of ritual you want to have. There's plant ceremonies. That's a whole different type of ritual, which I don't know. I guess you could categorize that as a healing ceremony,
Yeah.
or an awakening ceremony, or I don't even know. But I
Hmm.
think you can really look into what type of ceremonies are out there, and then as again, like Uni said, sit in the stillness and see what comes to you about what type of ceremony you need to have. Moon rituals are a thing. There's so many different types of practices, and you know we don't talk about religion a whole lot, but there may be religious things that you want to take part in. And if you are a spiritual person who still has a religious connection, maybe you want to integrate some of those religious things into your ceremony. um that's still very much. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, no, no. I didn't want to cut you off. I thought about remember I mentioned earlier in the month about Black Panther and how they did like the ancestor ceremony or ritual where they connected with their ancestors. That's a whole nother thing as well. Like you're not necessarily connecting with it's not you may be alone in the physical or personal, but you're connecting with your, your spirit guides or your ancestors. So that's another one that I think
Mm,
could be considered. Yeah.
yeah, no, that
Mhm.
definitely, and it's not something I had thought of, although you did mention it once before. um I guess also it would be like, um descendants, in the sense of like baptisms and baby
Mhm.
dedications or things like that. I don't know how many of us actually still do baptisms. I did have my daughter christened when she was young, and
Mhm.
that's what I was going to say before, was that I still participate in a lot of the Christian, rites of passage and things like that, because that was my upbringing, and it's still meaningful to me. It just has a different meaning than what my elders gave it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
but there's nothing wrong with incorporating those beliefs and those ideas into your rituals that you're performing in a spiritual sense, because let's be real, it all comes from the same place. It's just been distorted over time. That's all. Um Anything else you want to say about types of rituals before we move on to ritual tools?
No, that
No.
was it. Thank you.
Great. So we usually do a section in our homeroom. I'm getting homeroom and study hall mixed up this month. In our study hall, where we talk about different crystals and herbs that you can use to support your learning and your movement and your practice around whatever it is we're talking about. So this month, that didn't really work because it can be any crystal, it can be any herb. There's no specific ones that really help with this, because rituals really are you know they're like a practice, but that is on a higher level, right? So it can cover so many different things. And so this instead we decided to kind of talk about the different tools that you could use, right? Depending on what your purpose is for your ritual. And Uni had mentioned, which I thought was great, was in the calling in of the elements. And so we have a list here of different tools that relate to the different elements. Do you want to start with the first one?
Sure. I'll start with air.
Yeah.
Calling in the elements, first of all, it helps to really deepen the experience. I know in one of the prayers that we learned with Queen Afua, she ends it with, teach me how to heal with air, fire, water, and earth. And
Hmm.
so I really think about that a lot in my life and how, the elements, we're all made up of all the elements to begin with, you know what I mean? And how working with those elements helps us to heal. And so the first one that we have here on our list is air. Air represents your thoughts, your breath, It helps you set intention. It's the astrological signs: Libra, Aquarius, Gemini. You're talking your third house, your 11th house, and your seventh house, 311 and 3, 7, and 11 in astrology. And some of the ways that you can incorporate the air element into your ritual, be it family, healing, personal, um, or otherwise, is by doing breath work. You know, it's by there's so many types of breath work. You can breathe slowly,
Right.
deeply, fast. There's so many different types of breath work. I really urge you to do some research and figure out like what type of breath work will work for you. Because the type that works for me may not work for you. I know some people who the faster rhythms of breath work give, it kind of like feeds their anxiousness, and so they need a more slower, deeper. You know what I mean? Really think about what's going to work for you when it comes to breath work. Another one is speaking affirmations. Your breath, again, is working with your breath,
Mhm.
your tongue, your mouth, your throat chakra. And another one, oh, actually, we have a video coming out next week on speaking affirmation, speaking of which. So, plug, not shameless, but there's a plug there for that. um, and then another one I have, which it actually goes with the next element as well, but I did want to include incense and smoke.
Mm.
We talk a lot about burning sage or burning different herbs, dried herbs, to either clear the air, to just do all sorts of things. And so I even saw someone post on one of the social media sites yesterday about reading the smoke like as divination. So I thought that was interesting as a ritual. But yeah, those are the ones that I have for air.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think I had a thought and it went away. That's what I
Sorry.
think.
Did I
No, not your fault.
talking?
No, it was me. It wasn't meant to come out. It just left. Okay, so we'll get to fire element. So your fire element, oh, I think I was going to mention you were talking about the crossover between like, so with the air element, if you have incense, you're going to obviously need fire to light them, or if you're smudging or something like that. Even with tobacco, some people do it they smoke it, but also, when they make snuffs and stuff like that, it's often, fire is an element in developing that. So there is some overlap in all of these, right?
Yeah,
That's what I wanted to say. It came back. Thank you.
awesome.
So fire, it's going to be associated with, let's see, it's Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. So it's the first, fifth, and ninth house.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, fire is all about movement. It's all about passion. It's about motivation. It's about drive. Um, and I think, and it's also like it gives me solar plexus kind of energy, like and to some extent, I feel like there's some heart in there, you
Mhm.
know, because when you talk about passion, right? So, and they are next to each other, so it makes sense that there would be some overlap there. Some of the things that we can tools that we can use for a ceremony would be like a bonfire. I love a good bonfire.
Me too. Oh, yes. I haven't had a good one in a while, but yes.
Ah, when you come visit, we're gonna do a bonfire. That will be our ritual.
Yeah. So excited.
Yes. So I love a good bonfire. And making sure that you have things to burn in it. I usually, if I have a plant or something like rosemary or anything that I'm trimming up, or whatever, I definitely save those pieces for the bonfire. Things that have beautiful smells and aromatherapy type, so that's where the air and the fire kind of overlap quite a bit. Can't have fire without air. So yeah, bonfires are a big one, and I think that that can be an individual kind of thing, but I think bonfires are really great for communal ceremonies, family ceremonies, things like that. And there's so much that you can do with that. And I'll talk about it kind of with the next one, which is a burning bowl. And this is kind of a small fire that you burn to, if you're trying to release things, maybe you're burning them in that burn bowl. Or I'll start a whole bonfire to especially on a full moon. Don't get me started. A full moon and a bonfire, yes, we're throwing everything in there that I'm ready to release. It's time to go. Right. You can also do a bonfire or a burn bowl on a new moon and set an intention and throw it in there to send it up to spirit, to send it up to the ancestors, so that you can get support with it. There's so many different ways you can use a fire to get action behind something. It can be a clearing, but it can also to get action behind it. It can be a show of passion and motivation to get moving on this thing, and setting an intention that way. That's a great way to do it. So one thing I do want to mention with any of these, as we're talking about these different elements, is look at your astrology and look at, what it is that's stagnant or needs moving, or what's moving too fast and needs slowing, and then determine which one of these elements you really think needs to be utilized in your ceremony or in your ritual. Um, it's not one size fit all. There's no one way to do this. There's no one right way. I think that's the most important thing to understand, is no one right way. So yeah, I think that's really all I have on fire. Do you want to go for water?
Yes, I love to. So water, the water element is about your emotions. It's about flowing. It's about cleansing. It is associated with Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, fourth, eighth, and 12th house energy. Um, I think water is one of the most beautiful tools to incorporate in your ritual. I use, I tell people all the time, growing up in a very tumultuous environment, I used to take baths like every night. Like I didn't necessarily take showers. I would literally take a bath every night growing up as a child. And I feel like it helped me so much, you know what I mean? Like I feel like it really grounded me and really helped me. And I remember as I got a little older, and I was in a house that I couldn't take baths as much as I wanted to, and how I did get out of alignment, you know what I mean? And so I think that water is definitely one of the elements that helps me, personally. um you can go sit by the water if you have water near you, a lake, be it man-made or natural, or a river, or any body of water is helpful. You can wash your hands, you know what I mean? I've seen people do rituals where they're cleansing their hands, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
sometimes they're incorporating other things such as herbs and oils and things like that. And it helps, like if you're doing it with intention to cleanse or heal, or if you're going to be um, a uh, a practitioner, if you're going to be like a leader in a ceremony. I'm trying to think of the name of the person who would do it, but if you're gonna kind of like be guiding other people, there's like a whole ceremony around cleansing your hands as well as your overall energy. Adding oils, I just mentioned essential oils to a bath, adding them to any cleansing ritual that you're doing. And also, when you drink your water, I remember the very first call I had with Queen Afua. She told me when we were setting up the call, she said, have a glass of water with you. And I was like, okay. Like, okay. And the first thing she had me do on the call was, I can't remember what I said, or I mean, I think I repeated something after her, and I spoke over the glass of water, and then she told me to drink it, and then she asked me what did I feel afterward. And that was like a small little ritual ceremony. It was like
Mhm.
very small but very significant. No one had ever taught me this. I must have been about 33, 34 years old at the time. So it's very new to me. I never heard about speaking intentions over water or anything like that. And so I did that, and I'll never forget. I felt, energy on my left side. That's your feminine side, and it just made me go down this whole rabbit hole after I got off the call with her, and it was just really beautiful. So using water in that way is also really helpful. So yeah, that's all I got for water.
Awesome. I love water, but I'm a very watery person as a Cancer,
Mhm.
Cancer Pisces moon.
Right.
Oh, and you know what else I like about water is that you can really you can get all four elements by using water. If you make like
Mm,
a tea, you have the heat, you have the earth of, with the plants, and then the aroma, you get the air. You can really do it all. When it comes to using water, you can really
I
have some
love that.
balance. I love that.
Yeah.
Um so next we'll talk about Earth. And so our Earth is associated with our Earth signs, which okay, I'm gonna try to remember them all off the top of my head. Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn.
There you
There we
go.
go. Okay. Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. We're talking second house, sixth house, and the 10th house. These are our work houses. Those are the very stability focused houses, very stability focused signs. Earth is all about, the physical. It's very much about the physical. And so some of the things that you can utilize I would just go with earth itself, like having dirt, grounding, putting your feet in the dirt, being barefoot. I I've say this all the time, having my hands in the dirt. That's such and yes, I probably use that more as a spiritual hygiene thing, but I can see incorporating dirt into, a ceremony, a mud bath, something like that. I've seen, different cultures where they put the dirt on their skin, as they do whatever ceremony it is they're doing. So there's so many ways that you can just incorporate the earth itself. But also there are crystals which come from, deep within the earth. We talk about crystals every month. So if you ever need an idea, go to any of our study halls, especially from like the last 6 months. And we definitely have lots of ideas there because we really try to give you a different crystal and herb to work with every month. And then herbs would be another way that you can incorporate the earth element. Um, and herbs also, different herbs have different elemental, associations with them as well. So you want to look into that depending on what you're trying to bring in. And like I said, there's overlap in everything. These plants come directly from the earth. They grow of the dirt. The dirt is their nourishment. The dirt is, well, it's not dirt, it's soil. It is health, it is life, it is vitality. And so anything that comes forth of that, I would definitely, root vegetables come to mind in doing a particular ceremony. Um Ginger, especially, beets, especially, like things like that. And especially if you're doing like a healing, because that's such a physical thing that, herbs and vegetables and plants and things like that. Another way I think that you can incorporate earth would be animals, and not necessarily the animal themselves, but sometimes, I talk to my chickens, so I'm a weirdo like that. It's okay. Or your animals, your I know that I've seen blessings of the animals and things like that. And
Mhm.
so there's so many different ways that you can incorporate different elements from the earth, different things that represent earth. Rocks, we talk about crystals, but a rock, a stone, um a boulder especially, I think, is really anchoring, especially if you are using ceremony to get grounded and anchored. A rock, a boulder, and or just, the dirt, the earth, the soil itself. And these are just a few things that we are putting out here. There, it's not an exhaustive list. There's so much out there that you can work with. We're just giving you some ideas of ways to look at things, and then you do your own experiments. You do your own time with spirit, and allow spirit to speak to you and through you as you develop this your rituals. And so we find ourselves almost at the end of the hour.
Look at that.
Look at that. So we have one more thing left, and that is a journaling question, kind of to reflect and integrate everything that we've talked about. And as we've gone through this, ask yourself as you sit in your quiet time with your journal, what rituals have been revealed to me this month? What is it that's coming to you? What are you seeing? And kind of get started on your creation of the ritual in your life that needs to be there. Um, and I'll repeat it one more time just so everybody has it. Everybody in the chat, we'll put it in the chat. What rituals have been revealed to me this month? You know, and that's really all we have for you guys today, other than just being so grateful, so grateful for your continued support and watching us. And I pray that you are getting something beautiful and wonderful and transformative out of these episodes that we do every week. This is really a labor of love for me, and I'm sure it is for Uni. Uni, do you have anything you want to say before we sign off?
Yes, I want to thank you all so much for joining us. And I just want to remind you that all you need is one thing. I had a teacher who she had a thriving business. She had classes, she did rituals and ceremonies every month. She sold, her business was thriving. Crystals, herbs, you name it, she did it. And she said that if she even with that, you know what I mean, like she wanted us to keep buying and supporting her business, but she said if she could tell people one thing, she would tell them they only needed one thing. Just start with one thing. One is enough. Connecting with one crystal, one herb, one element is more than enough. So don't think that you have to try to, like Umi said, gather everything and do all these things. One thing is enough, and consistency is what's important as well. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you all so much for joining us.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for joining us here at Earth School Journey. We appreciate you. And until next time, we'll see you. Peace.